Good morning and a very warm welcome. We'd like to give a welcome to country. We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land on which we gather today, the Darug people. We would also like to pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, and we acknowledge all Aboriginal peoples present.
All right, so like I said, I just want to acknowledge the people online. Sorry, I forgot to say hello to you earlier, but you're definitely a part of the church family as well, so hello. Before I have some photos for you guys to show. Thanks, Scott. That's great. So I just want to give you guys a little bit of background about who I am, just because that will give a bit of context to what I'm saying today. So as Michaela mentioned, my name is Lindsey Aisbett. I've been a member of Engaged Community Church for a couple of years now. I think I've met most of you, but if I look to be an unfamiliar face, it's because my husband's a shift worker, so unfortunately we're not able to make it every Sunday. We were actually gone for 2.5 months last year because once the borders opened and we were able to get to see my family. I'm originally from New York. You can probably hear that in my accent. So we went over there, as well as before we moved to this location, my husband, Jason, and I, he's right over there. Give everyone a wave. Yeah. So blessed I am to be your wife, but I'm a bit biased. We were actually members of the 6 p.m. congregation, the night service. So thank you so much for welcoming us to be morning people. Still struggling with that a bit, but we'll get there with God's grace. Just wanted to share some photos. So that top one is from a great day. It was from our wedding day down in North Sydney. And these are my beautiful, beautiful parents. Hi, Mom and Dad, if you watch later. That's Lee and Linda. I am super blessed to be their daughter. And this is an oldie but a goodie. This is my beautiful brother Lee, and that's he was 5 and I was 10, and we were in Disney World, so that was great. And then, seamless timing, Scott. And this is my beautiful Australian family that have adopted me. This is Jason's side of the family. So right up here in the stripy gray shirt, that is my father-in-law, Jim. Right down here in the center, that's my brother-in-law, Dan. Behind me in this photo, we have my mother-in-law, Kathy. That's my brother-in-law's girlfriend, Charlotte. And behind her is what I affectionately call my grandmother-in-law, but her real name's Barbara. But I call her grandmother-in-law. So that just gives you a bit of an overview about my life and some context. So I want to share a verse with you that Troy gave me when he asked me to speak today. And it's from 1 Peter 3. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. I think that's so important. And just so reflecting on that, I was thinking about, what we as Christians call our testimony. And I met a wise Christian a couple of years ago who had walked with the Lord for many years. And he gave me his testimony in about 60 seconds. And I was hanging on the end. And I was like, is that it? And he was like, well, no, but sometimes you only get 60 seconds. And that really stuck with me. And I thought, you never know what opportunities God is going to give you. So here's the short version. My lovely husband and I, Jason, we just visited a church plant of a church called Church by the Bridge down in North Sydney, where we used to live on Blues Point Road. And through the loving care of the congregation members there, it just drew us in. We wanted to learn more. And through the refreshing preaching of actually who Jesus is, and then doing a few evangelism courses through the church, like Christianity Explored and Alpha, we became followers of Jesus. And so that's the simple, short version. Strap yourselves in for the long version. Don't worry, I will be not too long. But so when I grew up in upstate New York, Rochester is actually where I'm from. It's not majority, but I would say there's a lot of Italian Roman Catholics in Rochester. It's just kind of a lot of them immigrated over, and so those were my roots. And so growing up, we attended Catholic Mass a lot. Kind of petered off more when I became a teenager and things like that. But the Catholic faith never really sat well with me. There was always lots of Catholic guilt. I don't really understand who God is, but I feel like, whoever he is, I'm not quite sure if he's a nice God or what that is. And then the whole confession with the Catholic priests, that was always a bit concerning to me. I was like, I don't really feel like I should be telling you this. And I really didn't at that point understand what sin truly meant either way. So I think that was part of the discomfort. I just kind of went away from the faith, even though I didn't really at that point, I would consider, have faith. And that just kind of gives you a little bit more of the when I was younger. So I got older, and like I said, we stopped kind of going to Mass. I went to uni. I went to a very secular kind of, liberal university. So I remember seeing the Christian kids on campus and thought, oh, that's a bit interesting, but I wasn't quite willing to dip my toe in those waters. So I just kind of continued on, moved over to Sydney, and I distinctly remember actually, not long after moving to Sydney, kind of thinking of those big questions of life of, I wonder who God is and I wonder what happens at the end. But I liked to file that in what I call the bottom drawer. I just carefully tucked it in there and filed it away because it was uncomfortable and I didn't want to think about it. And I thought, that's for a time when I'm, getting ready to die at the end of my life. And I'm going to confront that then because that seems like a good time to do that. But luckily, God had other plans. And I have another verse to share with you guys because when I was reading my Bible the other day, I just stared at it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. So it's from Isaiah 65. I revealed myself to those who did not ask for me. I was found by those who did not seek me. To a nation that did not call on my name, I said, here am I, here am I. All day long I have held out my hands to an obstinate people who walk in ways not good, pursuing their own imaginations. And I just love that because it just really spoke to me. I 100% was pursuing my own imaginations. Like I said, I just freshly moved to Sydney. I was working a corporate job in the city, and I was just enjoying going out and partying with my friends and with Jason and just really enjoying that city lifestyle in my 20s. I didn't have time to think about God. I was just, like I said, filing him in the bottom drawer and thought, there'll be another time to think about that. And so, in the beginning of our faith journey, it didn't actually start with me because, like I said, I just wasn't really interested. But it actually started with my wonderful husband, Jason. So not long after I met Jason, he had recently become a firefighter. He works for Fire Rescue New South Wales. And he was laying in bed at work one night, and now I know that, this was firmly the Holy Spirit kind of at work, but at the time we didn't understand that. And he thought to himself, if I went to a call tonight and I died, what would happen to me? Well, I guess maybe I'd cease to exist, but I kind of want to exist. And is there a heaven? How do I know there's a heaven? And so all these questions started to stir inside him. And unlike Jason, he is a very proactive problem solver. He just meets things head on. He's not a bottom drawer filer like me. And so he just started to wrestle with all these questions. And, being in the fire brigade, they're very blessed with a lot of time off. So I think that, back when he was working in the corporate world and he worked 5 days a week, again, kind of like me, he just didn't have time to think about that. But he just was given this new season where he had lots of time to consider that. And and it didn't sit well with him. And so I remember, this is rewinding a bit, this is back when I was still living in the US. We did long distance relationship for 3 years. And I was talking to him online and he was asking me some of these questions and what I thought. And I said, well, to be honest with you, I'm just as in the dark as you are. You know how I grew up in the church and how confused I am. I said, I really don't have these answers, but I don't know, maybe you need to go see a priest or something, which is kind of funny because of what I shared, but at that point, that was all I had. And so one day, Jace actually did visit a church. I believe it was an Anglican church, kind of out somewhere here in the hills where he was living at the time. And he knocked on the door, and he asked the pastor some of these questions. And the pastor said, well, I think you should start reading the Bible because, in my opinion, a lot of the answers to these questions can be found in the Bible. And Jace pretty much almost said, great, can you just show me what page? Because at that point, neither of us realized what the journey he was about to begin. And again, as a problem solver, he just wanted to really tick that box, move on with that, and just, say, okay, I've solved that. Like, I can move on with my life now, and those uncomfortable questions are pushed aside. So that was the very beginning. And then fast forward a bit again, a few years passed, I moved over from the USA. We were living in our brand new, beautiful apartment in North Sydney that God blessed us with, which we didn't know at the time. All these blessings in our life have just flowed through our entire life, and before we even knew God, there were just so many blessings. But anyway, so we were living there, and Jace comes to me one day, and he says, hey, I've, over the years been struggling with these questions. I think I want to go to church. And I said to him, okay, yeah, we can do that. In my head, what I didn't tell him was, oh, church, that's so boring and irrelevant. There's standing and chanting and kneeling and chanting and just sitting and chanting, and it just takes up time on my Sunday, and I just want to sleep in, and I'm not really interested in that at all. There's nothing there for me. But I pushed that down. I pushed that down inside, and I thought, personally, how much he's struggling with all of this. You need to be the supportive partner here. So I, like I said, swallowed my pride, and we took ourselves off to this church plant on a Sunday, and I walked in, and it was confronting. Like, in a good way, I guess, for me, because as you can probably tell, I'm quite comfortable with people, and I really enjoy meeting strangers, and I genuinely enjoy, facilitating relationships. I actually work in sales as my job, so I enjoy talking to strangers. It's something that I do. But it was confronting because I walk in, and there's like 20 or 25 people, and they're all super joyous, and they rush over to us, and I'm just like, oh, this is a bit different than Catholic Mass. There's not just hundreds of people everywhere that are just kind of ignoring you and waiting until the second they can run out and, go to the parking lot and go home. And so it was this next level experience it was my first window into what a true Christian community actually looked like. And again, I didn't understand that at the time, but it just drew me in, and I wanted to know more. And so just the genuineness of the people and them wanting to know, like I said, genuinely who I was. And I had never encountered that before in that way, in that loving way. And so we started to go to this church quite regularly. And it was just the refreshing preaching of actually who Jesus is. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, like in Catholic Church growing up, why had no one said it this way? Why didn't I understand this before? I can't believe this. Like, I was so close to going to hell, and that really, really freaked me out for a while. And then I realized, as I continued to read the Bible, that God has a good plan and that everything happens for a reason. And I felt more comfortable in that. But it was just the call of Jesus, who Jesus is on my life, that I had never really understood that, and who he was. Because as a Catholic, you hear he's the Son of God, but as I was, kind of continuing on and through uni, I was like, how can you really know that Jesus is God? And, because I had never read the Gospels for myself. And so that was kind of our first taste. And then as we got more and more involved in the church, we started to do some courses. And the first one was called the Belonging course. It was just a really low-key, you sit in the pastor's living room with tea and coffee, and he tells you what it's like to belong to Church by the Bridge and what they believe and all these types of things. And I remember walking down there on the night saying to Jason, this is pretty nuts. Like, you don't just go to the rectory and hang out with the priest. Like, we're going to go to the senior pastor's house, and he's going to invite us in, and his wife is making cupcakes. Like, it just really just shocked me, and I was just like, this is a different world, but was really like enjoying it and wanted to learn more. And yeah, just even the care I received there that night, it came up that I was from overseas, and it was difficult for me to be so far from home, and just the prayer, like just the people that covered me in prayer there that night, it was really beautiful. So we continued on and we did Alpha and Christianity Explored, which I mentioned in my short testimony. Those were amazing courses and just gave me answers to questions that I had always had, but again, never really thought to explore, like how do we know the Bible is accurate? How do we know that we can actually trust the Bible? Those sorts of things. So it was a really, really awesome, crazy time. And so I don't really have an exact day or time. I know a lot of you are probably the same, where you can say, oh, this is the day and time that I decided to follow Jesus. But it was more of a journey, except I do vividly remember that next Good Friday and just sitting in that really dark, candlelit, reflective service and just sobbing the gravity of what Jesus did for me. I'll be careful now that I don't get teared up right now. It just really, really hit me for the first time, and it was just overwhelming. Like his grace, it was just, yeah, it was incredible. It was really incredible. So since then, a lot has happened. We've gotten married, and we sold our apartment in North Sydney, and we were kind of living in the hills temporarily out here because that's where Jace grew up, and our plans were to move to Queensland. And we actually dropped in to Engage Community Church. That was clearly God's plan. But we were just kind of looking for somewhere temporary in between the move. We jumped in for a few weeks, said hi to Troy, met some of the young adults at the 6 p.m. service, got connected in, and it just felt really right. And we were like, oh, this is a shame, but nice knowing you guys. We're moving to Queensland. Like, I guess we'll see you on the other side in heaven. Bye. And then we moved to Queensland for 6 months, and we're just absolutely loving it. But it was more our plan than God's plan. And that was pretty clear when the pandemic hit. So we actually moved to Queensland in February 2020. Isn't that funny? And then once things kept happening, Jace was he was commuting back and forth to work. And when the really hard border shut, we were like, okay, we're kind of at a point here where we need to make a decision. It was really difficult for us because we don't enjoy living in Sydney, and we had made that decision, and it just felt like a weight was lifted off, and we were like, oh, we can finally go. And so then to have to come back, that was really, really difficult. And it's something that we're still very much wrestling with. But I still remember the drive back and just feeling God's peace in that moment and knowing that it was his plan and that we actually needed to follow him. So basically, just to kind of tell you where we're at presently, these past 2 years have easily been the most difficult in my entire life. And I'm pretty sure Jace can attest to this as well. The season that we're in, we are firmly in the wilderness. We despise living in Sydney. We really do. I'm really sorry for all you Sydney-siders, but it's not our jam. The traffic, especially out here, like just the density, the people, the attitudes of people, it's not our jam. I hear my friends over there laughing because they know this really, really well about us. And so I came across this verse the other day when I was reading the Message version of my Bible, and it was just it hit the nail on the head for where we're at. The psalmist, Psalm 66 says, "Bless our God, O peoples, give him a thunderous welcome. Didn't he set us on the road to life? Didn't he keep us out of the ditch? He trained us first, passed us like silver through refining fires, brought us into hard Scrabble country, pushed us to our very limit, road tested us inside and out, took us to hell and back. Finally, he brought us to this well-watered place." And not only could I relate to all the hard Scrabble bit, that's an interesting word, isn't it? But this verse really gave me hope because, like I said, we're still firmly in the wilderness. We are not in that well-watered place, at least yet. And so reading this, it kind of refreshed me to say, okay, there is hope that this isn't going to be forever. But I don't know if any of you have been in the wilderness, probably. it's a hard time, but it's an amazing time with God. And that is just what I'm trying to focus on. And I'm just trying to be encouraged by all the things that he has for us in this time. And I just wanted to share with you guys some of those learnings to, hopefully encourage you and me too as I read them out of everything that's been happening over the past couple of years. So the first one is having a personal relationship with God is the most important thing about our faith. Sounds pretty simple, and you'd probably be like, oh, she's a Christian. How did she not know that? But it was kind of in the flurry of, converting and just really kind of focusing more on the social side of church and how that was really gratifying to me, moving over and not having many connections. And it just felt like, I believe that Jesus was my savior, but it was a very different context. And moving here and being in the wilderness, God actually gave Jace that revelation and then passed it on to me. And it was just kind of like an aha moment. And we've really been focusing on that now. And it's just, it's a real milestone. Things have really changed and for the better with our relationship with God and everything that kind of flows from that. The second one is how to handle repeated spiritual attacks. And that was something that I hadn't really considered too much about. I think in the Western world, oftentimes, like in the majority world, the rest of the world, they very much believe that there's good and evil at play, and that there's a lot more than just what we see. And in the Western world, I see people nodding, that sometimes that's not really spoken about as much. But as Christians, very much in the Bible, it's very scriptural. And just having that realization, and over lockdown, had a wonderful Bible study with my lovely friend Nikita, who is here today. And we studied Ephesians 6, and that was really eye-opening and another great kind of milestone on the journey. The last one is slowing down. And that was a really big one for us in the pandemic. And so now we're just trying to be a bit more intentional about not packing things in. And, even though we would maybe like to do that thing, or we maybe would like to go and see that person, we're going to put God first, or at least we're going to attempt to. We're not perfect, but these are all things that we're working on. If you have any tips for me with any of this stuff, please feel free to share, because I'm definitely not an expert. And just some other ones, listening for and discerning God's voice in the daily rhythm of our everyday lives. I have a spiritual director. I would highly recommend it. This is another thing that I didn't even know anything about, and I did not seek it. She just came into my life and said, hey, spiritual direction is where I sit and I pray with you and I talk through what God's maybe doing in your life and giving you some insights. Wow, that sounds awesome. Like, sign me up, right? So, if anyone wants any information about that at the end, please feel free to ask me about it, because it's just been transformational, and just journeying with her has been awesome and given me so many insights. And then the last one kind of ties in with everything else that I've been saying, but understanding how to have a two-way conversation with God and how he guides us. I think when I was a baby Christian at the very beginning, it was a lot of prayers of help, God, help, and that's kind of the only time I sought him in prayer. And now it's learning more about, just not even saying anything, just sitting in his presence and what obedience means and all of these things. Like I said, they all kind of tie together. So through all of this, Engage has been a real rock for us. And I just want to give a shout out to our Connect group that meets every Tuesday at our place. They have just been wonderful, wonderful believers who have journeyed with us and encouraged us and have prayed for us. So much answered prayer and so much amazing things go on in that space. And also for Troy and Edwina, I hope you guys are watching this on replay at some stage, because I just want to say thank you so, so much for all of the pastoral care and all the wisdom and the teaching that you provide to us. We would just be lost without you guys. So you've just been a huge, huge part of our journey back here in Sydney. So thank you, Troy and Edwina. So in closing, I just want you to take a moment to reflect on your own journey. Maybe you were born in a Christian household. What a blessing. Maybe you came to faith in life later like me, or maybe you are still carefully filing things away in the bottom drawer for a rainy day. But I would highly recommend that you just do a little bit more research and see who Jesus is and what he actually means for your life. Because for someone like me that was just, focused on success in the world's eyes. How much money can I earn? How many things can I, how many handbags can I purchase? How can I buy an apartment in the city? All of those things, to completely 180 changing my life and saying, okay, if I never own a house, I guess I just have to accept that. And, if I buy a cheaper handbag that, doesn't have a name brand on it, that's okay. And if I buy my clothes at Kmart, Kmart clothes are pretty cool. So, just obviously these things don't make up our faith, but it's just been a part of the journey for me and refocusing what's important. And so I would just, highly recommend that you seek Jesus out and see how awesome he is. And I have a last verse actually about him to encourage you. Now that we know what we have, Jesus, this great high priest with ready access to God, let's not let it slip through our fingers. We don't have a priest who is out of touch with our reality. He's been through weakness and testing, experienced it all but the sin. So let's walk right up to him and get what he is so ready to give. Take the mercy, accept the help. And I'm just going to pray over that right now for us. Dear Lord, thank you so much for the gift of Jesus. I just can't stop smiling right now. He's just so awesome. And I just pray over every single person that is here today and is watching online, that they would really seek who he is for their life and how he can transform it and just make you so light and full of peace and not fearing anything in this life and beyond. Thank you, Father, for the gift of Jesus. Amen.